Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Rick Matt, President and CEO of Post Road Equipment Finance. Thanks for joining me, Rick.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
It's great to have you on the program. I know our paths cross a couple times a year at different conferences, and always curious to hear more about your background in the industry, Rick. And
Sure.
look forward to chatting with you today.
I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on. I know you've had a number of these. I think you're getting close to 200, and I watch a lot of them. Not every one of them, but I've watched a lot of them, and it's been great. It's been something that I've been thinking about reaching out to you, but I think the last few months we have crossed paths on a number of conferences, and this topic came up, and it's definitely something that's been on my bucket list to get on your agenda for one of these.
Oh God, what an honor. Okay, I need to make sure this one's really good then, Jesse. Don't mess this up. Don't mess this up.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. But,
Awesome. Well, Rick, for those people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and career to date equipment finance?
Sure. I kind of date myself a little bit, but maybe not as much as others in the industry. But I kind of began my career, I guess 20 plus years ago, coming up on 25 here. I actually started not in the leasing business, which is probably pretty consistent with most folks that are in the industry today. Nobody marketed this industry to us when we were in business class in college. But I actually started in school during the dot-com era, 2000, Y2K, and at RPI, which is where I went to school. They were focusing everybody to go into consulting. And so I spent my first year and a half in the IT consulting world. I went out to Chicago for 2 months for a training program. They taught us how to program. We did a Blockbuster kind of website. So I have a bit of a technology background from my early days back in the first iteration. And so that was about 2 years. .com had busted, Y2K was over. And it was really the projects that we were on were pretty tough. The few and far between, and consulting organizations. There was a bit of a recession at that point in time as well, and so consulting organizations were laying folks off. And I was on a kind of I would say a lackluster project, and decided to make a move, which is when I made the transition coming through the RPI recruiting process. GE was heavily on campus. And I knew of the IMLP, so the Information Management Leadership Program, and was lucky enough to be one of the few postgraduate folks to be into that program. So I started about 2 years out. Most folks come out of that program right out of college. And I spent the first 2 years at GE in a rotational program focused on the IT side of the house. So more project management around deployment and development of applications to support the GE Capital businesses. So it wasn't too far from where I was, but so that was a great experience. Spent 6 months in Schenectady, New York, Niskayuna, New York, and then most of my the 3 other rotations were supporting the capital businesses in and around the Stanford Danbury marketplace. And it was great, but it was a long way away from the customer. And the customer was why you joined the consulting business, was to go and provide value to the customer on the customer site and interacting with the customer. And that just was very far away from what we did at GE and where we operated in the IT organization at GE. I always say it was a long way away. You couldn't throw a football and connect the pass if you wanted to hit the customer from the GE IT department. So my last rotation, I ended up, on sort of a good project with a great business leader, a guy by the name of Mike Fisher, who was, he was doing a cross-functional role at the time. He was a private equity guy, and he said, "Look, you don't have any sales experience. You don't have any financial services experience, but if you go to this business called commercial equipment finance, they'll teach you everything you need to know." And I said, "All right, that's great." So, and that was kind of that was my end of program off program process, was to go out and network with that business, and landed a role actually on familiar name in the industry, Rob Seltzer, his team in Montvale, New Jersey. So That was sort of my intake into GE, and then from there it was kind of a junior role on the sales team, a sales rep role, and then the leadership role on the direct side. So we spent most of the time on the direct side of the business, and then spent a couple of years after I was in that world for a while. Made a transition down to Texas, where I spent quite a bit of time. 2 years down there, moved the family in the vendor finance business. So, and that's really where I got a lot of linked up with Lou Vigliotti, because they were supporting the business, and the team in Dallas wanted to be more connected to the capital markets team in Hunt Valley, and so I got the opportunity to really to build out those relationships there. And that was 2 years, and up until the point where we got pregnant with number 5. We have five kids. I know. So that's my fun fact for the day. I have a couple others for you along the way here, but and my wife kind of said, "I'm gonna head back to Connecticut, and you're invited." And I said, "I guess I'm coming." So, and that's when I came back. GE had announced they were selling its businesses, and I made the transition for about 18 months into Webster Capital, Webster Bank's equipment finance business. And from there, I got a call from some of my former GE colleagues, and that's where I ended up in this role at Post Road Equipment Finance, formerly known as Encina Equipment Finance, back in 2017.
Perfect. So, I guess starting off at GE on the IT side, you kind of learn, I say from a salesperson's perspective, you kind of learn how some of that sausage is made.
Sure.
Pardon the analogy. But when you're out in the field talking with clients, I think that helps that process quite a bit.
Absolutely. It's actually, if I think about some of the things I've done over my career here, when you're at GE Capital, it's a big organization that has a tremendous amount of talent that's supporting the businesses from a technology standpoint. You want to get something done. It just took a long time to get done, but they had plenty of resources to get it done. The prioritization effort was there, and you can make things happen. But that skill set is it transitioned very well into this organization, because as a startup, you are sort of forced to do things that you don't normally do as a career in the commercial world, right? I could prioritize a project. I know what the customer wants and the customer needs, but here we don't have the resources and the firepower.
You don't have the GE army that can go out and take care of that for you. You're just like, wait, who has to do that?
Exactly. And I joke around, sort of joking around, but I am still our Salesforce admin. But I still maintain that role. We just in some of those things you have to pick up a lot of responsibilities, and that's one that I haven't been able to move on. We have good support from a former GE colleague that's on the outside, but I still maintain that designation. So,
I mean, but from a servant leader perspective, your team sees that, right? You're not above doing some of that stuff even today, and I'm sure that helps, right?
Sure, absolutely. And it does, because everybody has a little bit of that responsibility, right? If you think about a traditional HR function, very powerful, very bureaucratic organization, maybe in a big company like a GE, here it's very decentralized. When we talk about onboarding, certain things with Insperity, certain things with the laptop and the technology providers, offer letters, and it's very distributed. Those functional roles are distributed pretty significantly across the team. Everybody's picking up some responsibility.
But from an onboarding process, if I'm a new employee and I don't know anyone there, right? A lot of you guys, I'm sure, worked with each other in the past. Yeah. Being part of that cohesive unit, seeing everyone get involved. I mean, that's fantastic, because I would think that would be more of a family style environment than you're just kind of a proverbial number.
It is. It does. It feels, we're still pretty small. 33 people. It's not a big organization. And some of those folks don't even sit here in Westport, so it feels like even a smaller, tighter knit community here. So, but yeah, no, it's been great. And the difference between the large organization, there's a tremendous amount of value that I extracted from GE, and in the GE process, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you figured out what you wanted to take, and you left the other stuff behind. But the learning and the training, the development, the relationships that that you were able to build and for me, it was 13 years. For others, it was much longer. The entire management team here, I think in terms of years of service at GE Capital, I think I have the fewest of those years of service at GE Capital. We have some folks that are 20, 25, 30, almost 30-year folks that are here on the leadership team that that we're able to extract a tremendous amount of value, and they're providing that in a startup form. We don't like to call ourselves a startup anymore, but because we do have a pretty healthy balance sheet with sophisticated size and scale. But at one time we were just a startup. So.
And then you went to RPI. Are you from Connecticut originally, or upstate New York?
No, I grew up in upstate New York. I know we talked about, I think you were from Watkins Glens. I'm from Glens Falls area, a little town called Hudson Falls, right next to it on the Hudson River, in that Lake George, Saratoga area.
Beautiful. The part of New York that people don't expect. They think it's just the city. I mean, Watkins is beautiful, but Lake George up there, that's even nicer.
It's nice. You've got to figure out how to do some more leadership meetings up on the lake. It's a great little spot up there. A lot of folks know it here. It's one of the cleanest lakes in the country. Beautiful, 32 miles long. It's really a great place. It was a great place to grow up. But like all those small towns, it's tough to make it long term up in a market like that. So.
Now, was it hard to sell your wife to move to Texas in the first place?
No, she was great. My daughter, on the other hand, when she found out, on the bus that we were going to Texas, she came in and crumbled on the floor as a second grader. It was a tough one, but she had a good time. Everybody had a good experience, and we're all better for it. So it's good.
Perfect. Well, thanks for sharing that, Rick. So I know you talked a little bit about post-road equipment finance.
Sure.
Do you mind just kind of diving in a little deeper in regards to markets you serve,
Sure.
industries, etc.?
Yeah, so post-road equipment finance, as we're now called, formerly known as Encina Equipment Finance. Same business, same platform, nothing changed. There was a name change. I'll kind of talk a little bit about that. But we are a large ticket equipment finance player. We think about ourselves as a generalist. So we'll finance most industries across the U.S. And Canada. We don't do business internationally with the exception of some transactions in Canada. And we do most collateral types. We tend to talk about our target industries as those things that we don't do, right? So it's, we try to stay away from certain areas. You'll see in our portfolio, very limited oil and gas exposure, just the volatility there. We don't do semiconductor manufacturing, those big, large assets. It's just it's a kind of a specialty arena. We had a business at GE that did that, and we decided to stay away from it, and a little bit more expertise needed in that space. But commercial and corporate aircraft, those are things we don't do those. Those are, always say our global jet friends up in Danbury, and they continue. Vivek and the team up there are great, and they know the business better than we do. So we always say they can have all the corporate aircraft they want, and the commercial side is just. We actually sit in a building where some of the former GCAS, GE Commercial Aviation Services folks, are upstairs and in our building. And so if we ever see a commercial aircraft, we can just kick it right upstairs to them. And then we stay away from blue water marine. But everything else is pretty much operating lease rail car assets. That tends to be a pretty big asset class for a lot of folks in the industry. It's not something that we partake in. We kind of stay away from that. So really, it's pure generalist. If you think about the manufacturing, technology, transportation, construction, and really transportation, it's more in the specialty arena. But that's kind of where we like to play.
Sure. Direct, indirect.
Yeah, we do. So our platform is a direct business. We kind of modeled the business after what we had built at GE Capital. And so we have a direct team. It's not a large direct team like GE. GE had, we call it zip code assignments at GE Capital. That's not the case here. But we do have a direct team. We do business on the buy side. So we've done, we transitioned the last 2 years. It's been about 70-30 direct to indirect. And that's a pretty good mix at the current volume thresholds we like to do. We did about $520 million of new business origination last year. So to have 2/3, 1/3 kind of in that split between direct and indirect kind of fits our target profile, and we like that a lot. So yeah, so we, ticket size as a large ticket equipment finance shop, we think about ourselves as $5 million and above. And the portfolio has grown pretty steadily over the last 7 years. Can't believe we're at 7 years. I think I might be close to my 7-year anniversary here, but it's we're just inside, just north of $900 million of net earning assets, with a goal to be well above $1 billion by the end of the year, which is a big threshold for us. We talk about originated volume. We've originated more than $2 billion in assets, but as anybody is in this industry knows, amortization is a curse. It's a good thing. It's
Sure.
a good guy. So we get a lot of that to replace every year, so you can't grow dollar for dollar. But we have grown the business year over year, every year, both on the assets and the origination side for the last 7 years. It's been pretty fun.
That's fantastic. Congratulations on that milestone, and you'll have to shoot me a text or whatever once you cross the. Maybe you do it before the golf tournament in August. Another celebratory drink.
I don't know. Summertime could be quiet. So
I know. Yeah. It's awesome. Congratulations on those milestones, Rick. So and you're located in Danbury, Connecticut?
No, we're actually in Westport. So
Westport. Okay.
Right. Yeah, so the original business that we built, we started back in we kind of launched in June of 2017. The original founding partners, they would tell you they probably started quite a bit earlier, but there were 4 of them. 2 of them were relationships and senior risk people and folks that I had worked with at GE Capital, and so we decided when we first started, we set up shop in Danbury because that was familiar to us, and that's where we all sat and worked, and there was a large contingent of equipment finance folks that were there still, and I think the Wells Fargo team, Global Jet Capital, and so it was familiar to us. And we spent about 18 months there, but then we realized that a lot of our team was coming from the lower Fairfield County area and from New York State, and not necessarily from the Danbury market and north. So we decided to make the move down to Westport, Connecticut. And we've been here since 2019. So it's been a good run, and yeah, it's been fun.
Do you have any remote employees, or are you guys typically just up in the Northeast?
Oh, we do. The commercial team tends to be a little bit more diversified. We do have 3 folks, I think maybe 3.5 folks that have an office here in Westport. A few others that are not located, but we actually, that was one of the things that it did for us, and I think it did for a lot of folks in the industry, is it forced us to be comfortable in a decentralized environment. And so as we started to think about new hires post-COVID, when we were sort of back in the office, we had to hire some people that were remote employees because we were all remote employees. But then when we got back, we said, well, let's just think about where the best candidate is for the job, and let's not worry about the location, the proximity, because this was a hotbed for equipment finance for a long time, and there's still a good number of players here.
A lot of people out there,
But there was fewer and far. The junior talent, if you think about sort of the junior talent that we work with, are now senior talent, in other parts of the industry from back in the GE days. So it was just a different dynamic as we started to recruit, and we have put a couple of doc folks that are remote. It's important to have expertise in your area, and for the documentation, we have one underwriter that's remote, and they've been doing a great job, and we haven't missed a beat. So it was sort of at first it was a test, and then it seemed to work a little bit, and so we've been more. Obviously, we prefer folks to be here in the office, and more than less, but we have been flexible in terms of hiring the right talent outside of this Westport, Connecticut office space.
You hit on something really important there, right? Where it's like, if you have the right candidate, right, it's like, do they really need to be there? But it's also a tricky double-edged sword too, right? Because it's a culture. You want the people there. So it's how do you blend them in a little bit? Because I've been working from a home office since 2011. So, but I always make it a point to go to home base at least once a quarter because it was important
Sure.
to me, especially in sales. It's the people that are delivering the product that you're selling.
Yeah.
You want to build those relationships and
Yeah.
okay, who's this guy? What's he making me do? It's like, no, it's like, this is here. So I always found that to be important. Are you bringing people in every now and then, or how,
Yeah,
from a
yeah,
culture perspective,
yeah. We
what's
do.
that
I
look
mean,
like?
it's an important piece of the culture, building the culture of the firm. Um, we have quarterly board meetings, and so when we have the quarter, every other quarter, one quarter we're in New York, which is where our new owner is, and so one quarter we're in Westport. So we tend to give everybody the option to be here during that one time what we're having the board meeting here locally. And then we build a few things, a few events around that, so we can get the team together, make sure everybody knows each other, has a chance to spend time together, and really build the culture of the organization in person, not just through this nice medium.
Sure.
It's good to be able to use
Yeah.
this technology to see people, but when you have that one-off conversation, at a happy hour after a board meeting, that type of interaction is very important for the team to have. So
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you had a quite 5 years ago. I mean, other than this being a video interview.
I mean, we did.
Are
I
you really?
remember when the team, we were teams in Ring Central, and we were trying to figure it all out. I remember we were scheduling calls, Ring Central calls at 11:15 instead of 11 because the circuits were too busy at 11 on the hour and the half hour. We had to manage that, and then we had to figure out how to use this technology, right? And I think everybody is seamless now. It's very easy to have a quick update chat and call and have video tied to it, which is nice.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely more personable. And from a BD perspective, it's fantastic.
yes.
Except for when you have that person that doesn't have their camera on, you're like, all right,
Look,
something's off.
it's not easy for everybody to feel comfortable on camera. Seeing yourself and hearing yourself, those are two things that a lot of folks, including myself, I'm not a huge fan of, but you get used to it, right?
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
over time. And so some people are very active in the team in terms of their video comfort, and others, and that's okay too.
Sure. I want to circle back to the GE discussion
Sure.
in regards to that, I guess, rotational program that they kind of have you in, where I'm guessing you're just learning different aspects of the business. I've seen this in limited leasing companies. The one that kind of comes to mind is Great America.
Mm-hmm.
Globally. I mean, if you brought that methodology there, where I think he wants you in collections, all these things, like what would your thoughts? Because you really don't see that too much nowadays.
No, you don't, and it's unfortunate because I think for me personally, I think it was a great balance, because if all I was doing at GE at the time was the IT stuff, I'm not sure I would have finished the 2 years. It was not quite what I had expected initially, but the development and the training that you got was much broader than the function that you were focused on. We talk about this place called Crotonville, and those are opportunities to get some deep finance training, and strategy training and leadership training, that well beyond figuring out how to roll out Siebel service to the operations group, right? It's just a very different. They're developing and training the future leaders of the business in a multidisciplinary approach. And it's unfortunate that it was a great training ground. It's not unfortunate. It was great to have that. It's tough to see it go away, but all great things go away at some point, right? So and you just have to figure out what the next step in the learning and development for the industry is going to be. And we talk about Stripes, which is a great program. We haven't had anybody in the program yet, but it's I've been chatting with Lisa and the monitor and learning and engaging with that team about the program, and it's a great alternative to what I developed internally, and eventually we'll have some participation in that, I'm sure. And the Alpha, the Equipment Leasing Finance Association does a great job. We have a lot of we brought in some more junior talent this year, and the classes and the online learning that they're offering through Alpha has been has been great. It's been very good. And the team is just sort of clamoring to it because they don't have any industry knowledge, right? They come in with a little bit of expertise, but maybe not in the equipment leasing industry. And so it's good to get that basics out of the way. And and then I know CLFP, we don't have any CLFPs here yet, but that's also another great tool.
Sorry, it's Reed Rakovich. I'm sure she has some algorithm on LinkedIn that she'll tie into this, and she'll be hitting her. Melissa will be hitting you pretty soon.
I'm sure. But they're great. You know, I think about the training and the development that, you know, the folks in at GE got. I think that we can achieve. We are achieving that just in a different way. And
sure.
It's broader. It's allowing other multiple organizations to access that type of learning and development, which is, I think it's fantastic for the industry.
Well, spot on. And plus those relationships that you've forged throughout your time there. You know, that's one thing I wanted to drill into too. I'm sure you talk to those people a lot still today, even though you might compete on some business. We compete with a lot of people.
No, we don't. There's no competition in our market. There's no competition. There's no competition in this bank, is there, in this business? Yeah, no, it's been that's the. I mean, if you think about the one takeaway from, you know, you go through your 1 week or 2 weeks of training, and then they give you the sheet that says assess this course. What's the best thing that we always got out of these things was the relationship side of it. That you're working with people that you otherwise wouldn't work with in your day to day. You have now connections in the rest of the organization that, you know, and you know, one of the guys that I was in program with is he's the chief. I think he's technically the chief security officer for Target, right? So he's stayed in that track in the security world of technology. But it's great to see him on LinkedIn. I think we have a CIO of one of our graduates of the program is a CIO of an Airbnb, right? So there's tremendous amount that has come up through the organization and taken some very senior roles in the world. And then just our industry in general. I mean, I was just you know, as I think through some of the people like, you know, Dave Jury, Amrita Patel, Dan Clark, Bjorkman, Will Perry, you know, Jody Green, Scott Dennis, like, and then Eric Dush, Eric Miller, like all these names are, you know, leaders of businesses in this industry, and they're all folks that we interacted in one shape or form of another throughout our careers at GE, and it's been great. I mean, GE was a great place for a lot of us to develop. I think if it was still around, a lot of us would still be there. But that's the best part about, I think, what happened to GE Capital was that it gave a lot of those of us that were sort of stuck in that mindset, give us the ability to go out and try something different, and lead careers that are different than what we had envisioned for the next 15, 20, 30 years of our lives.
No, definitely a great incubator.
Good job. And a lot of companies have benefited because we lost a lot of people to the Bank of Americas and Wells Fargo's and the other institutions as the bank, you know, the regional bank market and the bank market, you know, really blossomed in the late 90s and 2000s. A lot of that talent has spent a lot of time at the General.
Sure. Well, I guess we can segue into a different part of this here. With this market the way it is, do you see that maybe shifting a little bit from some of the banks who are kind of pulling out? I mean, is it impacting large ticket as much as it is some of the small micro?
I think, you know, the market, the pendulum always swings. The question is how fast and how quick is it going at any one point in time, right? So I think 5 years ago, the independent captive market probably owned more of the industry. The banks really blossomed over the last 20 years. I think that change started. No, it didn't really. We're starting to see that happen and see that impact more now than we did back in 08, 09, and 10, but it started then, right? The GE Capitals and the CITs of the world being regulated out of the independent market was sort of the precursor to what's happening, I think, now in the bank market. So there is disruption there. Others, some are, you know, we've seen what we see with Key and Truist, now Signature, you know, BCI, some of these regional platforms that were there and the large platforms that are kind of taking a more strategic viewpoint around equipment finance. That's certainly shifting and that's changing, and that creates opportunity in the non-bank space. I kind of think about us as we get the bank world and you've got the non-bank world, and we kind of sit in that non-bank space, and that has created opportunity for us. Continued regulation of the banking world Basel III and the end game and all of that fun stuff that the regulated institutions have to deal with. That's something that that is going to continue to drive business from from the bank market to the non-bank market. That doesn't come without the growth in the 1.7 billion or trillion dollar private credit market, which is where we sort of sit, right? You think about the the world of capital, we sit in that private credit market, and that is I think some folks over the last year and a half, 2 years have said this is the golden age for private credit. I think I read an article in the journal that said maybe the golden age is turning into the silver age, and it's quickly becoming less golden. But like anything else, I think when you have this type of activity and a significant amount of capital that gets created in any one part of the market, you start to question: is it a bubble? Is there a bubble happening? Is there things happening under these large asset managers that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't all of this money that just got flooded into the market? And so you got to be careful of that. These large asset managers investing so quickly. The question is it creating opportunities for dislocation and challenges in the market ahead? But that's like anything, right? It's when capital moves, it's going to create risks and opportunities. And frankly, it's a great place to play. I mean, I spent the early part of my career at GE, saw it as a non-bank, a true independent, went through the process of regulation, went to a bank and saw the real heavily regulated area at Webster, and it was it felt really good to come back to a non-bank independent that doesn't have to deal with as much regulation than what they're dealing with in the bank market. So I think the regional bank disruption certainly created an opportunity. You see the private credit world creating opportunity for new platforms like ours. That's great competition. That is just healthy, and we'll all figure out how to play and work together in some instances, and we'll compete against each other in other instances. No different than the bank market has been operating for 20+ years, right?
Sure. It's just now these big banks can't compete on rate a lot anymore, and the value-added service that an independent like yourself can bring. To me, it's a no-brainer.
You hope that the margin differential between a bank and a non-bank starts to compress, because the question is, what's the right risk-adjusted return for anyone given credit? And just because you have a low cost of capital doesn't mean the risk profile of that credit is any different. It is appropriately priced, right? So, but that, who knows, right? I say this industry has always been losses are low, and when losses are low, you start to say, well, what is the right risk-adjusted return for this product set?
Sure. And when losses are high, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. When losses are high, you got to start pricing things higher, which leads us to our couple of challenged industries, right? You think about where this industry feels like transportation this is quite the cycle that the industry's been dealing with over the last. I think we're rounding the corner in 2 years, right? It's coming up.
Sure.
In the maybe Q3 might be 2 years where the cycle's really been significant. It's the supply chain whipsaw creates dramatic effects, and it's been a while since we've seen a duration of this magnitude in the transportation sector. And healthcare is the same, right? If you think about COVID, I mean, you got burnout talent pools. Folks decide, it's not worth my time, effort. You have to replace that labor. To replace that labor immediately is very expensive. To replace it over time is very expensive, and you don't have as much control on the top line of the revenue side. So it's very hard to immediately get to a place of stasis, if you will. It's going to take time and potentially restructuring, which is what we're seeing in both those two industries. And in our space, we do a lot of private equity backed transactions. Just happens to be where the bank market tends not to play, where you have a levered credit, and we have significant debt wall maturities in our space. So as we think about those organizations that we're going to potentially lend to, they got a lot of debt, and that debt comes due all at once typically, and that's how that works. And so that's a challenge in our space, and trying to make sure we're maneuvering around that so that we can keep our portfolios clean. At the same time. So, but delinquencies and losses, at least in our space, I know that they're ticking up a little bit in sort of the small mid-ticket space, but in the large ticket, it's been it's been pretty low. Historically, it's been very, very good. And we've seen a pretty significant backdrop for 2 years, right? You think about higher interest rates, higher inflation, economic uncertainty, geopolitical instability. You've got these broad themes that have caused a lot of restructurings and impacting the borrower base in our world, and it's the product set and the industries and the players that have been playing in this space, the large ticket space, have been treated pretty fairly, I think, in the whole thing. So, and it's finally good to see the capital markets start to improve. It's been we did our first securitization in 21. We did our last one in February. We've only done 3, but we've done, through this cycle, we've seen, the low, the good guy, which was 2021, the bad guy, which was 2022, and then this past, 2024, it's starting to improve. So the market's starting to heal. You see the broadly syndicated loan market start to improve, because I think you've got a view of the market that GDP is not going to be negative in recession. Not sure I agree with that, subscribe to that holistically, but it certainly feels a lot better right now than this time last year. And so that creates a little bit of opportunity for us in the industry, and the comfort level for folks. Our customers have to decide to invest in assets, and that's a long-term view of the world. And it's hard to take a long-term view when you've got so much risk and uncertainty in the market.
No, you hit that nail on the head, Rick, for sure. Thank you for that. I do ask everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves. So other than we've already discussed, what makes Rick kind of tick outside of equipment finance?
I got a couple others, Jesse, though. I always see them in. I always come prepared, over prepared. So, well, first is that I have 5 kids. My oldest just in the range of 19 to 8. My oldest just finished her freshman year at TCU, so we're proud supporters of the team.
She liked Texas that much, where she went to school there. I got it.
She went right back. I was, time outside, somewhere between Dallas and Fort Worth, and a little town called Flower Mound for 2 years, and then she went right back. She said, "This Fort Worth place is pretty cool. I like it a lot." And so I call it the country club, by the way. We're not members of a country club, but I call it her country club because it feels like that. It probably costs more than that.
Fantastic. That's a great analogy.
But I've done 2 triathlons, full-length triathlons. One I did with my wife, which was a proud moment for both of us to complete that together. That was really fun. And I use this fun fact on some of our industry calls of the ELFA. But during COVID, we had always talked about raising chickens and having fresh eggs in our house. And during COVID, we made the leap, and we started with a flock of 8. That flock grew to 26, and it's down to 1. As the bears, the hawks, and the foxes have not been kind to the Matt family chickens 6 to 8 months. But yeah, so we've lots of kids, lots of chickens, and a couple Ironmans to boot. So a few fun facts from me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Brooke and I got into the chicken hobby in COVID as well. It started off with a flock. Not even a flock. We just bought eggs and did an incubator and hatched like some silkies. And then you get me where it's like, these things don't produce eggs. I want eggs. So I went on the Tractor Supply after a few bourbons, and next thing you know, our flock of 8 went to like 20 real quick.
Yeah. Don't go away for a week.
No. And then so like now it's like I sit there and I've been gone for a week, and I don't even want to know how many eggs are sitting out there right now. We did have a coyote once, because we live in Arizona, get into some of our roamers is what we call them.
Yep.
There's pieces everywhere. You're just like, what happened?
Yeah, the hawks are pretty tough, but the bears, man, they rip things apart, and that was the issue, because they broke down the coop. So I was like, yeah, either we find it.
You go out there and put on some boxing gloves. No, you're not gonna mess with that.
No, get away.
Does the one you have remaining have a name?
Speedy. It's gotten away. I think and that was its original name. So he's living up to it. She's living up to her namesake. So,
that's fantastic. Yeah. My last question I have for you, Rick, is why should someone want to do business with Rick Matt, Post Road Equipment Finance?
Well, it's not Rick Matt you're doing business with when you do business with Post Road. You're doing business with the Post Road team, and I think we have some of the top talent in this industry. We've got great people. they're great to work with. And the best part of my job is when I get these emails that follow a nice big closing on a tight timeline, and it talks about how great, how quick, how on top of the transaction the team was. Their expertise and knowledge in the space, second to none. We tend to teach and handhold a lot of our customers. A lot of them over the last couple of years have been first-time equipment finance customers, when liquidity was tight. And that takes leadership on every aspect of the business, not only the commercial team, but the risk team, the operations team, and in some cases, the finance team, in terms of setting up payments and getting things working. So the team is certainly the highlight of the experience with Post Road. We're extremely customer focused. We know that customers have choices, and we need to earn their business. And that's cultural for us. It's cultural throughout the entire organization. We had a business leader that once said, everybody's a sales guy, and that's true. And in this institution, like if you're not selling, if you're not trying to win the next deal, and that's executing on the current deal is about winning the next deal. Then you're not playing the Post Road game. And certainty of execution. When we set up our deal process and our deal flow to support a high say-do ratio. Say what you're going to do and do it, and that's full stop, right? It's we tell our customers up front, here's what it's going to look like, here's what's going to get done, here's when it's going to get done, and here's how it's going to get done, and we make that commitment to the customer and we execute on it. So that's what I say. The team, the focus on the customer, and our ability to execute. That's why people do business with Post Road.
Perfect. It's very refreshing to hear that. It's a win-win approach across the board there, Rick. So thank you.
Cool.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, sir. Look forward to seeing you probably in August for
definitely
the
in August.
Bears golf tournament.
Yeah, definitely in August. We'll be there with our team in tow. We're not going to be at the top of the leaderboard, that's for sure. But we will certainly be there supporting the EF Cares organization.
Fine. Based on some of the scores that came in last year, I'm going to have to do some auditing. I might just take off golf and drive around and be like, hey.
You gotta get that ball tracking technology. Keep an eye on everybody's ball. How many kicks you get?
Yeah, exactly. You bought 4 mulligans, okay? You just took them all in one hole. Stop it.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. That's a fantastic organization, and I really appreciate you, suggesting we hope you have me on one of these. It's been great. It's been fun. It's always a good time chatting with you, and it's good to do it as part of your formal program. So, been great.
Sounds great, sir. Well, thanks for your time, and you have a good weekend. Thank you.
All right, take care. You too, Jesse.
Thanks.